2020 was like no other year for all of us. And that includes every generation. Obviously, we still have people living that remember World War II or remember Vietnam, the Korean War, obviously the Cold War, all these different milestones throughout, the decades. And they were all very big, significant, terrifying, life-changing things. But 2020 was on a global scale, so it was on the scale of a world war, essentially. But instead of us fighting against each other, which eventually this is what it actually did turn into, just not with warring nations, more so keyboard warriors. But it basically was a war against a virus that broke out. There's a lot of conflicting information too, and that is part of the reason why we became so divided over this issue, 2020. So instead of talking about how 2020 affected everyone in the world at large as if I know anything, I'm just going to speak about my experience, what 2020 has done for me. First and foremost, I was a barista since I started working. I was like 13, 14 years old. I've always been in coffee. In the beginning, it was more so like Dunkin' Donuts, a snack bar at a bowling alley. And in 2015, I started working at like an actual, or 2014 rather, I started working at an actual like cafe that was like really fancy and served like really good high grade coffee. And it was my introduction to basically everything that Starbucks was trying to do, but making, I guess, the fast food version of it. And it literally changed my life. It was incredible to like work with not just like really good coffee and espresso, but learn how to make latte art and have all these really cool conversations with people. And I worked for all these really cool cafes, Art Cafe, Boxer Donut, which used to be Gypsy Donut. Gypsy Donut almost came out initially because that's when I first started working there. Everyone would hang out at Gypsy, and what it became, Boxer, is incredible. What a beautiful passion project, a dream come true. And then when I moved to Jersey, I was looking for a job because the job I was trying to get wasn't hiring at the time. I started working at Boonton Coffee Company because it made sense for me. Well, I'm overly qualified to work in coffee shops, so I was working at Boonton Coffee Company from the tail end, like in the fall season of 2019 into the very beginning of 2020. And I remember very similar weird, surreal vibes like after the 2016 presidential election happened when I was at my coffee shop job. And I remember like just like the mood of the place and how everyone felt, and it was like kind of crazy and surreal. This was just like that, but it was like this more impending doom instead of like, oh, like our political guy didn't win and this guy is a big question mark, so who knows what's gonna happen. This was more so like, oh, this could kill everyone, or like, because we didn't really know, right? Like we knew about the Black Plague, and then we had all these other different things that we got under control or got lucky with, like SARS, which is funny because COVID is a type of SARS. So it's almost like 20 years later, we got an actual global outbreak of SARS that couldn't be contained or stopped in a way. And I just remember I had just the weekend before, it was the end of February, I played the Millennium Music Conference with my band, the Foxfires, and we had already we had like a temp drummer at the time, because our drummer, who was in the band for 5 years, decided to take a break from music. But the crazy thing is I had my life. This is basically what I'm trying to do with this little ramble that I'm doing. But I basically had my life, how I expected it to be, what I expected it to be, and just like a rug being pulled out from under you. As I'm in early March working at Boonton Coffee Company, we're getting the news that COVID is spreading, that places are shutting down. Are we gonna have to shut down? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen to live music? What's gonna happen to the coffee shop job I'm working at? Like, can we just wear masks? And then it almost was like a storm was blowing in. That's essentially what it was, because places were like closing left and right. We were given mask orders, and then we were giving stay-at-home orders, and then like certain places that were deemed essential were being allowed to still operate, or like operate but within arm's length. And I watched all the procedures slowly creep up to the point where the shop I was working at had to close, and all the employees had to be let go, which was a benefit because that means that we could collect unemployment. But I had never been let go from a job before, and I had never not worked in my adult life before. So this was insane. And just a couple months ago, I had gotten my first apartment with my partner at the time. So, and then I heard all these horror stories about people like trying to get unemployment and not getting through to anyone, and calling every single day for hours. And I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna suck. This is gonna be awful. And it did. It was exactly that. It was months, not weeks or days or hours, months of not being able to get through to unemployment, or not being able to get unemployment, and the stimulus checks that eventually came in and were very helpful. We still had bills. There was rent freezes for some people, but that wasn't for everyone. I still owed rent. I still had to pay. I was lucky enough that my partner, her job, even though they had the masks and they had the partial shutdown, so people that worked in the office parts of our building, because I work there now too, office parts of our building, they weren't allowed to be there, but the people that worked in the laboratory were, so long as they worked different shifts, they wore the masks, etc. And so I'm lucky that she was working. At the time, I was facing the fact that live music was gone. It added extra stress to the band that already had mountains of stress on our shoulders. Our drummer just left, and we found a really good temp drummer, but between the three of us, even though it seemed for a little bit morale was back, as soon as 2020 hit, all that morale was gone, because we had just signed a recording contract with a new record label that offered us a dream deal, essentially. And as soon as 2020 hit, it tanked that. And then we had to kind of just, our last 3 singles were like squeaked out. And because of everything that was happening, and because of where we were personally at and how everything was falling apart, it's almost like those last 3 songs, or at least the last 2 that we put out in, I'd say the last 3 songs didn't really have the impact that all of our previous songs did. not just because we didn't have a budget for PR, but because the record label that we just signed with, they were losing their entire budget for the same reasons that everyone else. 2020 completely destroyed the future of the band that I was in. And it was a blessing in disguise, because the problem with the things that we cling to is that sometimes we cling to them out of familiarity and out of the hope and I guess, yeah, like out of the blind hope that it'll just work out anyway. Just overly invest yourself in something that's clearly not working out in the hopes that it will. So we almost needed, personally me, and the rest of the band too, needed COVID to hit in order to finally end a strained friendship, a work dynamic that was completely imbalanced and out of control. And to really kind of just bring us back to ourselves. Focus on what matters to us as individuals. We did this for 8 years. Our record label's gone. Live music is gone. Our source of income is completely gone. So what were we supposed to do now? We were trying out a new drummer, and it seemed like we got someone that, you know, was really good. But our ability to do the band the way that we were used to doing the band was impossible. So with that weight on me, on top of not working for the first time in my adult life, that weight being on top of me, plus not having any income and having to just continuously take money out of my savings, or whatever little savings I had, and also dealing with trying to get unemployment. Of course, this is how I spent my pandemic. Constantly binge watching things, constantly playing video games. I became obsessed with in the earlier portion, Animal Crossing. I think we all did. But then it was Breath of the Wild for me. But then I found Hollow Knight, and my God, I had never fallen in love with a video game soundtrack, look, gameplay, everything about this game. To this day, I think it is the perfect game, at least for me. But it became, how can I escape? How can I distract myself? I had a couple action figures that represented my childhood that I was really attached to and I really loved. Little did I know that was my subconscious inner child wanting to come out and look at my trauma and actually like feel through a lot of these things, because even back then when I was a little kid, I used toys and dinosaurs and all these different things I was into as escapes from the abuse I was going through. And little did I know that these things were coming back into my life as representations of my inner child wanting to come out, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard. But I was just constantly eating. Even though I was living with a vegan that cooked very, very clean, I would go for seconds. Or we would eat out. Like we would get Thai food from across the street, and it was so good. That's the thing, is that even though I recognize how depressed I was inept. I couldn't even be intimate with my partner at one point because I was so caught up in how everything about my life had changed. My whole life revolves around music. My whole life revolved around working in coffee shops. My whole life revolved around being self-sufficient. All of that was gone. The friend group that I knew for 8 years, that was also gone. Everything was gone. So 2020 changed my life, and I was deeply depressed, smoking every day, overeating, distracting myself with video games and movies and all this stuff. And it wasn't until the following year in 2021 that I started. I would even say in 2021 I started turning things around. Like during the pandemic, still during 2020, I was able to get a job because I wasn't comfortable. Once I finally got unemployment, I wasn't comfortable taking unemployment, even though the pandemic wasn't my fault. But like I wasn't comfortable, and also like there's the expectation of when you're on unemployment and you're taking unemployment, you are actually supposed to be actively looking for a job. So once I found out that the post office was hiring, I went for it. And I never had a real job like this before that pays you a living wage, that gives you health care, that has a retirement plan. You know, like obviously I was working 60 hours a week, which is rough, but you know, I got to spend a lot of that time. I'm more not in some ways. I still love and miss specifically Boxer when I was working there, but I think my post office job is the only job where like I still after the fact would get a little bit nostalgic for it. Like I fell in love with the town of Little Falls as a mail carrier, and I would not have experienced being a mail carrier or how beautiful Little Falls and Woodland Park are if it wasn't for the pandemic. And then also because of the pandemic, I wouldn't have gotten the current job that I have now, because you know, I knew I was lucky enough that I had a partner that also already worked there, so I sort of had an in. But like usually they don't want to hire people that are dating other people because that's like a work conflict thing. But since we worked in different departments, it didn't seem to be that big of a problem. Still, we didn't want to like be so openly, you know, like whatever at work. So, but what's fascinating is even though the pandemic initially, especially in 2020, I was depressed, I was overeating, I was smoking, I was distracting myself with video games and all these different things. In 2021, you know, coming off the heels of an extremely divisive election year, the end. This is how 2020 ended. Like the year 2020, it ended with an extremely divisive election in early November, and then in late November, my band breaks up. Both of which were outside of me, so I did not see that as, you know, like there's something I can do to stop this, or you know what I mean? Like I kind of. However I was part of these processes, I was, you know, take responsibility for myself. But essentially when it comes to the end of 2020, it was just like gut punch after gut punch, even though there was like these great achievements as well. There was like, we got a new apartment for only $50 more. It was a whole upper level of a house, which was really sick in Garfield. And so we had a whole new place, which felt even more like home than the last place. We got a sweet little kitty named Ray. She is actually turning 4 years old this year in May. I love her so much. She's easily the best thing to come out of 2020, full stop. But 2020 also did a lot of good for me as well. I mentioned the post office job leading into the fragrance compounding job that I have now. The end of the Foxfires was a blessing in disguise for me, and all of us going our own ways to kind of just like, you know, do our own thing. The election year was over, thankfully, even though 2021 started with an insurrection, which is crazy, but hey, we can't win them all, I guess. If only that was the attitude that we all take when we lose. Can't win them all. Better luck next time. But whatever. So 2020 just changed my career path. It inspired me to get more in touch with who I am and push my boundaries, like do a lot more inner work than I'm used to. It opened me up to polyamory. It opened me up to experimenting with a lot of different things that I used to be too closed off to do, you know, as far as career paths go, recording myself at home. Yeah. And I wouldn't be who I am now or where I am at now if it wasn't for that pandemic. And I'm very thankful that I had such an incredible partner throughout the entirety of it. And, you know, I know she saw the most difficult sides of me come out. I've definitely seen some difficult sides of her come out. But we grew a lot because of it. And my whole life has become a lot, like, the way that I view doing music now is completely different. Like, I can actually spend the majority of my time just making content or writing for other people. That's another thing that came out of the pandemic too. Not specifically because of it, but I would say that it was residual since like I was inspired to just be more open, try different things. You know, that's why I became a mailman. That's why I'm a fragrance compounder. That's why I started recording myself. I started ghostwriting for people and singing on their songs, and now I do that regularly. So everything about me now, like also my health too, coming out of the pandemic, after the way that I was eating and treating myself in the pandemic, I realized enough is enough. And it took me 3 more years to finally get to a place where now my relationship to food has completely changed. So a lot of the themes of these videos that I've been making is because of the pandemic, because of what I went through. It's completely changed my perspective. So a lot of good from a lot of bad. So that's how it goes. It's funny how that works. So yeah, thank you for listening to me rant about 2020. I know we're definitely 4 years now. We're sick of hearing about it. We don't want to think about it, but I do think that it's a very it was a very impactful, unique time for all of us, and I think looking at it, we can see all of the bad, but like maybe all the good too that might have came out of it. Like maybe some changes that were absolutely necessary that feel more like growing pains. So yeah, thank you for listening. Have a good one.